Like I had texted Shanann a few times that day, called her, say, but she never got back to me, but she wasn't getting back to any of her people as well. And that's what really concerned a lot of people is like, if she's not getting back to her, like if she doesn't get back to me, that's fine. Like she gets busy during the day, but she didn't get back to her people, which was very concerning. And Nicole called me when she was at the door, and that's when I came home. The most important thing, like, I'm not sure, I'll just wait for you to ask a question, but like, I want them wherever they're at. Like I have no inclination of where they're at right now. Like I've exhausted like every friend that I know of, and every friend that I have has called friends that Shanann has that maybe I didn't know about, and it's just like it's vanished. Like she's not, like when I got home yesterday, it was like a ghost town. Like she wasn't here, kids weren't here. I have no idea like where they went.
At 1:48 in the morning on August 13th, 2018, a flight touched down at Denver International Airport. Passenger, Shanann Watts, age 34, 15 weeks pregnant with her third child. She had been in Arizona for a work conference. 5 days, a full schedule, a long trip home. She texted her friend from the plane. She was tired. She was looking forward to being back. Her Uber dropped her at 2825 Saratoga Trail, Frederick, Colorado, at approximately 1:48 a.m. The house was dark. Her husband, Chris Watts, was inside. Their daughters, Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3, were asleep upstairs. By 5:17 a.m., a neighbor's doorbell camera captured Chris Watts loading items into his work truck in the driveway. Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were never seen alive again. What follows is not a story about motive. It is a record of what the physical evidence, the digital data, and the forensic science established, item by item, timestamp by timestamp, until there was nowhere left to run. The disappearance was reported at approximately 1:40 in the afternoon on August 13th, 2018. The call came from Nicole Atkinson, Shanann's friend and co-worker. She had arranged to pick Shanann up for a doctor's appointment that afternoon. Shanann wasn't answering her door. She wasn't answering her phone. Her car was in the garage. Her travel bag was sitting inside the front door. None of that fit. Nicole called Frederick Police. Officers arrived and made contact with Chris Watts, who came home from work to let them in. He was cooperative. He didn't appear panicked. He said he didn't know where Shanann was, that they'd had an argument when she got home, that she'd left the house while the girls were still there, and that he'd taken the girls to a friend's house before going to work at his oil field site. The story had a problem. The house had a Nest security system. The Nest smart home system at 2825 Saratoga Trail logged activity automatically. Investigators pulled its records. The data showed the following: 1:48 a.m. Front door opened, consistent with Shanann's arrival home from the airport. 2:30 a.m. Motion detected inside the home. 4 a.m. Camera motion registered in the master bedroom area. 5:17 a.m. No motion registered from Shanann. No motion registered from the children. Activity consistent with one individual only. The Nest data did not show the girls leaving the house. It did not show Shanann leaving the house under her own movement. It showed Chris Watts moving through the home in the early morning hours, and then nothing from anyone else. The children had not gone to a friend's house. That was the first piece of the story that broke. A neighbor on Saratoga Trail had a Ring doorbell camera. Its field of view captured a portion of the street, including the Watts driveway. At 5:17 a.m. on August 13th, the camera recorded Chris Watts loading objects into his company truck, a 2018 Ford F-150, owned by Anadarko Petroleum, where he worked as an operator. The objects being loaded were large. One appeared to be a bundle wrapped in a bedsheet. The footage was not clear enough to identify contents, but the shape, size, and handling were noted by investigators. The children were not visible. There was no movement consistent with 2 children being placed in a truck. What the camera did capture? One man loading something heavy before sunrise. The same morning, his wife and daughters disappeared. Chris Watts left the property at approximately 5:27 a.m. and drove north to San Diego Central. The digital trail. When Shanann Watts was reported missing, investigators immediately sought data from 2 sources: cellular records and the GPS logs from Chris Watts's company-issued work truck. Both yielded significant results within hours. Anadarko Petroleum maintained GPS tracking on all company vehicles. The F-150 Chris Watts drove was no exception. Every movement of that vehicle was time-stamped, logged, and stored on a server. Investigators obtained those records with a warrant. The route on August 13, 2018 was as follows. 5:27 a.m. Departs 2825 Saratoga Trail, Frederick, Colorado. Northbound on Colorado Highway 52, then east on County Road 49. Destination, Weld County, specifically an Anadarko well site called Survey 319, 7:12 a.m. Vehicle arrives at Survey 319 oil field site, approximately 40 miles from the family home. Chris Watts remained at the site for several hours before returning home to speak with police. He had told investigators he went to work as normal. This was technically true. What he did not volunteer was what he brought with him. Cell tower records are among the most reliable forms of location evidence available to investigators. They do not depend on GPS function. They record which towers a phone connected to and when, triangulating physical position to within a consistent geographic radius. Chris Watts's phone connected to towers along the exact route his vehicle GPS had documented. 5:27 a.m. Phone pings tower in the Frederick and Weld County border area. Consistent with departure. Between 6 and 6:45 a.m., phone pings towers along the Highway 52 corridor, moving northeast. 7:10 to 7:15 a.m. Phone pings tower consistent with the Survey 319 grid location. 2 independent data streams, vehicle GPS and cellular, placed Chris Watts at the same location at the same time. Neither could be attributed to coincidence or error. Shanann's iPhone was also analyzed. Its last location ping placed it at 2,825 Saratoga Trail. The phone didn't move after 1:48 a.m. It never left the house. When investigators executed a search of the property, the phone was found inside, along with Shanann's travel bag, her wallet, and her wedding ring. A woman who left voluntarily in the middle of the night does not leave without her phone. She does not leave without her wallet. She does not leave without her ring. She did not leave. Within 24 hours of the disappearance report, investigators identified a significant contact in Chris Watts's phone records, Nicole Kessinger, a co-worker at Anadarko. The volume and nature of contact between the two was extracted from both phone records and cloud backup data. What it showed was not incidental. According to extracted phone data, in the weeks prior to August 13th, hundreds of texts and calls were exchanged between Watts and Kessinger. Communication was frequent, daily, and sustained over an extended period. The night of August 12th into the 13th, communication continued in the hours before and after Shanann's return from Arizona, while Shanann was still on the plane. The morning of August 13th, contact from Kessinger in the hours following Shanann's arrival home. Kessinger was interviewed by investigators. She stated she had been in a romantic relationship with Chris Watts. She believed he was separated from his wife. She told investigators she had no knowledge of what he had done. She was not charged with any crime. The communication record, however, established 2 things. the existence of a motive Watts wanted out of his marriage, and the fact that his phone was active and functional through the night in question. He was awake. He was communicating. And he knew what he had done. On August 15th, 2018, 2 days after the disappearance was reported, law enforcement executed a search of Cervi 319, the Anadarko petroleum well site where Chris Watts had been assigned to work. It was remote, located in an area of agricultural flatland in Weld County. The site consisted of oil and gas infrastructure, including wellheads, pump equipment, and large above-ground crude oil storage tanks. Chris Watts was the only Anadarko employee scheduled at that site on the morning of August 13th. He had worked there before. He knew the layout. He knew the access. He knew exactly what was at that location. Investigators began their search of the site. The ground near one of the wellheads showed evidence of recent disturbance. Soil disruption inconsistent with normal operations. Approximately 8 inches below the surface, they found the body of Shanann Watts. She had been buried in a shallow grave at the edge of the well site. She was still partially wrapped in bed sheets from the family home. The medical examiner determined the cause of death, manual strangulation. She was 15 weeks pregnant. Her unborn son, whom the family had planned to name Nico, was also deceased. Investigators turned their attention to the crude oil storage tanks, large cylindrical industrial containers used to hold extracted oil on site before transport. A small access hatch on each tank allowed entry for maintenance purposes. The hatches were narrow. An adult could not easily enter. A small child could. Inside the first tank, the body of Celeste Watts, age 3. Inside the second tank, the body of Bella Watts, age 4. Both children had been submerged in crude oil. Both were recovered. The medical examiner's findings for both girls were consistent with asphyxia. They had been smothered. Bella Watts's autopsy contained an additional finding that would later become one of the most significant forensic details in the case. During Bella Watts's autopsy, the medical examiner noted the presence of her mother's hair in her stomach. This finding indicated that Bella Watts had been alive and actively struggling during or after Shanann Watts was killed. The presence of hair in the stomach is consistent with a child holding on to an adult, a child pressed against a body, or a child present while a violent act was occurring. Bella fought. The evidence recorded it. She was 4 years old. When Shanann's body was recovered at Cervi 319, she was partially wrapped in bed sheets. The sheets were collected as evidence and analyzed by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation Laboratory. The sheets recovered at the burial site were matched through fiber analysis to bedding from the master bedroom at 2825 Saratoga Trail. Thread count, dye composition, and weave pattern were consistent with sheets from the Watts family home. Investigators who searched the house found evidence of the bed having been remade. Fresh sheets in place, the original set missing. The staging of the bedroom was consistent with an attempt to remove evidence of what had occurred there. Luminol testing of the master bedroom floor produced results indicating the presence of biological material. The area had been cleaned, but luminol reagent reacts to the heme in blood and certain other biological substances even when surfaces have been wiped. The reaction pattern was consistent with a body having been positioned on or near the floor. Soil samples were collected from the burial site at Cervi 319. Additional samples were taken from the bed of Chris Watts's F150 and from the wheel wells. Forensic geologists and laboratory technicians performed soil composition analysis. The mineral content, grain size distribution, and organic composition of the soil in the truck were consistent with the specific soil profile of the Cervi 319 site, a combination of sediment types consistent with that geographic area of Weld County. soil does not move itself. It moves on vehicles, on boots, on objects transported from one location to another. The truck had been to that site. The soil confirmed it independently of the GPS record. On the afternoon of August 13th, while his wife and daughters were still in an oil field 40 miles away, Chris Watts stood on his front lawn and gave a live televised interview to Denver's KMGH-TV news crew. He said he wanted them home. He said he didn't know where they were. He broke down on camera. Investigators were already analyzing the evidence by then. By the time Chris Watts sat down for a formal polygraph and interview at the Frederick Police Department on August 14th, the digital trail had already established a significant portion of what the investigation would ultimately prove. Statement 1: she left the house with the girls. The Nest camera data showed no outbound motion consistent with Shanann or the children after 1:48 a.m. Shanann's phone didn't move from the house. The neighbor's Ring camera didn't capture Shanann or the girls departing at any point. There is no record, digital, visual, or witness of Shanann leaving the property. Statement 2: I took the girls to a friend's house. No friend was identified. No witness confirmed receiving the children. The Ring doorbell footage from other homes along the route produced no corroborating footage of the children in the truck. The GPS route went directly north toward the oil field, not to any residential address in Frederick. Statement 3: I went to work as normal. This was true only in its most technical sense. He drove to his work site. The GPS confirmed it. What was not normal, the objects loaded into the truck at 5:17 a.m. What was not normal, the disturbed earth at Cervi 319. What was not normal, 3 bodies, 2 of them in crude oil tanks, located at the one site where he was the only scheduled worker. A 4th statement came during his formal polygraph session on August 14th, after he failed the test. He offered an explanation, that he witnessed Shanann strangling the girls through a baby monitor, confronted her, and killed her in a physical altercation. That he then panicked and transported the bodies. The forensic evidence did not support this account. First, the children's autopsies found no injuries consistent with adult female strangulation. The mechanism of their deaths was asphyxia by smothering, a different action requiring direct physical contact. Second, the staging of Shanann's body, wrapped in sheets, buried in a pre-dug grave, was inconsistent with a spontaneous act of rage. A shallow grave does not dig itself in a panic. It requires time, intent, and preparation. Third, Bella Watts's stomach contents placed her alive and in physical contact with an adult after the point at which Watts claimed events occurred, a timeline inconsistency that the pathology record made clear. Fourth, the volume of communication between Watts and Kessinger in the days preceding August 13th, the deleted text messages, the phone calls, the established romantic relationship, documented a sustained pattern of behavior consistent with planning a departure from his marriage, not the spontaneous actions of a man who killed his wife in a sudden rage. Chris Watts was arrested on August 15th, 2018, 2 days after the disappearance report. On the same day, his family's bodies were recovered from Cervi 319. He was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste Watts. He was additionally charged with unlawful termination of a pregnancy in the death of his unborn son, Nico. Charges also included tampering with a deceased human body and 3 counts of first-degree murder after deliberation. On November 6, 2018, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to all counts. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus additional concurrent sentences. He was sent to Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin under a protective transfer. In January 2019, investigators from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the Frederick Police Department, and the FBI conducted a supplemental interview with Watts at the request of the Rzucek family, Shanann's parents. In this interview, Watts recanted his earlier claim that Shanann had killed the children. He admitted he had killed all three of them himself. He admitted to strangling Shanann in the master bedroom. He admitted to going upstairs and smothering Bella and Celeste in their beds. He admitted to loading their bodies into the truck and driving to Cervi 319. He admitted to placing his daughter's bodies in the oil tanks and burying his wife in the shallow grave. He said he killed his daughters because he didn't want them to find out what he had done to their mother. The confession changed nothing about the sentence. The evidence had already established the facts. What it provided was a record, a direct account layered over the forensic one. The two were consistent. The evidence had already told the story. He simply confirmed it. The Watts case is not defined by its motive. Motive is psychological. Motive is argued. Motive is contested. What is not contested is the record. A Nest camera logged the last verified movement in that household. A neighbor's Ring doorbell captured a man loading objects into a truck before sunrise. A vehicle GPS plotted every mile between a cul-de-sac in Frederick and an oil field in Weld County. Cell towers confirmed the route. The soil on the truck matched the soil at the grave. The sheets on the body matched the sheets from the bed. The stomach contents of a 4-year-old placed her alive in proximity to her mother's body, and placed that moment in time with forensic precision. Each of those items exists independently of every other item. Each one, alone, raises questions. Together, they answer them. Shanann Watts was 34 years old. She was 15 weeks pregnant. She had a name picked out for her son. Bella Watts was 4 years old. Celeste Watts was 3. The physical record is what remains. It does not bend. It does not forget. It does not need to be believed. It simply is.